This is Nancy and Netty, early childhood enthusiasts.
I'm Nancy.
And I'm Jeanette. And today we're going to talk about the Santa Claus tradition. So first we're just going to kind of talk about what tradition of Santa Claus we grew up with, because we both grew up doing Christmas and Santa Claus. So you go ahead and start, Nancy.
Okay, well, when I was growing up, my parents did Santa Claus, and I remember that most of our gifts, I think, usually came from Santa Claus instead of my parents. And I don't know, we would get up on Christmas morning and go downstairs, and all the presents would be sitting out there, and we would, of course, leave cookies and milk for Santa, and he would usually leave us a note too. Um, and I was I was pretty old when I found out that it was just my parents, but
Do you
then
know
I
how
was
old?
7 years. I don't remember exactly how old. Um, I don't remember. I would have to ask my mom. But I was 7 years older than my little brother, and so I got to kind of be in on it with my parents after that, keeping the secret up for him. Um, so yeah, that's what we did. What did you guys do?
Well, we had would always open up one present the night before Christmas, and that was like a family present. Like there was no Santa Claus presents. We'd open one present on Christmas Eve, and we could pick whichever one we wanted. So it must have been that there was like all of our just like our family Christmas presents sitting out. I think maybe like the ones that the siblings got for each other were sitting out under the tree already, but nothing else. So we do that, and we go to the midnight Christmas Eve service, and then in the morning, yeah, we'd wake up, and my sister would always want to wake up incredibly early, and me and my brother, as far as I remember anyway, we're like, we'll just wake up whenever we want to wake up. But she was always awake really early, and we made it a big deal that you can't go through anything until everybody gets up. So we'd get up, and you couldn't touch anything, and so everybody just went up and kind of slept some more in the living room until everybody woke up. And Santa would fill stockings, and we'd leave him milk. And I don't know when exactly in the tradition this started, and I'm sure it was my brother that started it, but we wrote a letter to Santa Claus the night before, like just to say hi and how's things going, and I hope it wasn't too cold outside, and sorry we don't have any snow, hope that didn't mess up your sleigh ride and stuff like that. And then at some point we started asking him questions like, do you have a wife? What's your favorite thing to do? What do you do in the off season? Stuff like that. And so in the morning, whatever we left out to eat, we would leave the milk in the refrigerator too. At some point we started doing this and drew a map so that the milk would be cold because we didn't know what time we'd get there and didn't want it to be gross by the time we got there. So we draw a map to the refrigerator and to the bathroom. And yeah, so in the morning, the cookies or whatever, sometimes it was carrots and stuff, because the one year Santa had left a note that morning that said that he was on a diet and didn't eat the cookies, so the next year we left water and carrots, I think it was. And so anyway, yeah, so Santa would always write something back, and it kind of actually over the years evolved into this whole like Santa mythology of our own. And I don't know when this happened in regards to when all of us kids, we're all 4 years apart. I have a brother that's 4 years older than me and a sister that's 4 years younger. So when we asked about the wife and stuff like that, and if they always use Rudolph and stuff like that, we would get an answer, and we started getting the answer, and it was like parallel things to our family. So I can't remember what it was, but like my mom's name was Rhonda, so Santa Claus's wife was like either, I can't remember now, but like Rhonda spelled backwards or something, that, Wanda or something like that. So it kind of paralleled our family. And the names of the reindeer at one year were, he said that it was like Polaris and Mitsubishi and a bunch of stuff like that. So it just kind of got really elaborate, and it was always some weird handwriting that didn't match anybody's handwriting. And so yeah, so it was pretty elaborate, and we'd wake up in the morning. Stockings were always from Santa Claus. We never had any idea. None of the family put stuff in stockings. It was always Santa. And then we had mostly family gifts, but a couple of them were from Santa Claus. And when we said something like, how did you know that I wanted this, or where'd you get it? They would say, Santa brought it. I don't know. I don't know how he knew, and stuff like that. So it was pretty elaborate for us.
Yeah,
But
well,
I don't remember. I don't really remember ever not. I don't remember ever actually believing it. But that's because, like, to this day, I still play it as much as I played it before, like, in my own mind. Like, I pretend it, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I remember me and my brother telling, or I don't know if this is a real memory or not, but I seem to remember being in the car with my sister and my brother telling my sister that Santa Claus wasn't real, and my sister crying a whole bunch. That's what I remember. I don't
Oh
I don't
no.
know if that's right or not, but that's what I remember. Um, so do you remember how you found out when you said you were pretty old when you found out he wasn't real? Do you remember how?
Yes, I do remember how. I was sitting at the kitchen table, or I was hanging out in the kitchen with my mom, and she had one of those Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and it was probably like Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul or something. So it should just goes to show how old I was because I was like reading her like parts of her book,
Uh-huh.
and yeah. So I happened to read a story that was about a mom telling her kids that Santa wasn't real and how um, well, or how the spirit of Santa Claus was real and things like that. And so I figured it out from that. And
Man.
yeah, I was, I remember feeling really devastated and upset. And I think my parents were both pretty disappointed that I found out also. Um, I remember my mom telling me just a couple years ago that my dad was like really mad that she had left that book sitting out with that story in it. But I of course didn't know that at the time. But
Right.
um, yeah, I remember crying and crying and sitting in the at the kitchen table with my mom talking about it, and um, then of course after a little bit I realized about the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy and
Oh,
all of those things
man.
too. And so, yeah, I was pretty disappointed for sure.
Yep. Um, I I I think I remember. I mean, like I said, I don't really remember like actually believing specifically because I just pretended for so long. But I remember being pretty sure or kind of wishing it was real still, or kind of maybe like kind of tricking myself into believing it was real still. And I don't know, I was probably at least 8. Um, and I went, we were visiting one of my mom's sister, and it was really late at night, and I never slept at night. And I could see out the crack of the door, and I saw her coming and putting presents out underneath the tree in the middle of the night, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, because I never saw my parents do it. And so then in the morning, I went out, and there was a really big present that I wanted to see, so I went straight there to look at it. And it said from Santa, but my aunt had put it under the tree.
Oh
And
no.
I mean, it could have been played off pretty easily as Santa. If it was my mom, and if we were still playing the game, my mom would have said, "Yeah, Santa just left him. I put him out under the tree for him. He didn't have time. Would have played it off really easy." But she wasn't there, and it was just kind of just a very straightforward, yeah, yeah. That's
Oh
that was
no.
my aunt. That was not Santa Claus, and so it's just kind of a reaffirmation. I remember not being so let down, but just kind of being like, "Oh man, okay."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned how you don't really remember believing, but kind of having that wishful thinking that he was real. And I had that too after I found out. And it was like the year I found out or the year after, I don't know. But I think my parents were kind of trying to keep that alive for me too. And we, my brother and I wanted a puppy, and so for we always went to while you were telling your story, I remembered a lot of things about our traditions
Yeah.
that I left out of my story.
Yeah.
But we always went to the Christmas Eve service at church, also. And, but like I said before, Santa always came on we always woke up on Christmas morning to Santa gifts. So, um, it wasn't normal for him to come like while we were at the Christmas Eve service, but this particular Christmas, when we got home from the Christmas Eve service and driving around to look at Christmas lights, there was a puppy in our living room.
Hmm.
Um, and both of my parents had been with us the whole time, of course, and
Nice.
I tried so hard trying to figure out, how they pulled that off, and I still don't know how they did it, but and they of course insisted that, it
It
was
was
Santa,
Santa.
and
Yeah.
so that's probably my biggest memory of like one of the gifts that Santa brought because, it seemed, I don't know, because I already knew that he wasn't real, but there was kind of still that magical feeling,
Hmm.
um, because that happened.
Yep. So then, this is a very interesting question since you remember finding out and remember being disappointed. What are you doing with your kid?
Well, um, Jacob and I, or my husband, Jacob and I, um, talked about it a lot before we decided what we were going to do because his family didn't do Santa growing up. So he never really experienced that feeling that you have as a kid,
Hmm.
believing in Santa, and it was really hard to explain to him um, why it was so important to me because he never really experienced that feeling, and um, so we decided to do it with Stella, and I still sometimes feel kind of unsure about that decision, but I feel more confident about it now than I used to. Um, my biggest concern with it was um, being afraid that when she found out, she would feel like we were lying to her because I mean, it's a lie, okay? It's
Hmm.
a lie, and
I think we can't really get around that. It
yeah,
is a lie. If you are
it's a lie.
actively saying Santa Claus is doing something, I mean, it's
Yeah, and I tried to say that at first we were kind of going to just do it where he would be something that we imagined about, and um, we would just kind of let her take the lead with it. And, as she got older, wherever her imagination kind of took it, we would follow.
mhm.
But I haven't really been doing that. I've definitely introduced a lot of the concepts, like leaving cookies for Santa, and this is what he looks like, and this is what he does, and he has these reindeer and stuff like that. I mean, which we also get from books and stuff,
Mhm.
um, but yes, I've definitely planted ideas in her head instead of letting her imagination run with it. But I I do think that if she ever asks about it, well, when she asks about it, um, asks if he's real, my plan is to um, ask her what she thinks and kind of go from there instead of, I don't know, instead of maybe insisting that he is real and perpetuating it further. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Okay. Well, we had these long conversations too. Chris's family um, was part of a church for a while that did, like, his immediate family was part of a church for a while that did a lot of Old Testament traditions, and so his grandma and aunts and cousins and stuff did Christmas, like you and I are talking about with Christmas trees and presents and stuff. But there was kind of a large chunk of time where they didn't do Christmas tree. They didn't have Christmas trees at their house, and it's really interesting to talk to his mom about because she says that she remembers feeling incredibly guilty about not having a Christmas morning in their house and a Christmas tree. And so they did this other event, and I can't remember what it was for, but it's similar to a Jewish holiday. I just can't remember which one, where they would go to this retreat, and she always brought presents for them to open then, so they kind of had an equivalent thing. And this was just, for a couple of years. It was still a Christian church, but it was just a denomination that focused more on Old Testament stuff. So anyway, that's very, very interesting. And so he didn't really ever care about Santa, didn't ever actually play Santa Claus. I think he said he remembers his cousins doing it, and that he was told he's not supposed to say anything about it. But so he really just didn't care one way or another. He says, if it's important to you, that's fine, we can do it, but it doesn't seem like there's a reason to. And that was when we were first married, which is 12 years ago now. And so now our daughter is 4, and the last couple of years I just basically haven't said anything one way or another about any of it. My brother, who has a daughter that's her exact same age, by just a couple of weeks, they actively do Santa Claus. They did the thing online where you can get a like a videogram from Santa Claus that says their name. And so it said, "Hi, Keegan, this is Santa Claus. Just wanted to make sure you're being a good girl," stuff like that. So they did a lot of stuff with it. And they present it as if it's real. And so for my plan, since Chris said it's fine either way, my plan was to say, this is what we pretend. That's what I was going to do too. This is what we pretend, and this is just something we do at Christmas time, because we play all sorts of things as if it's real. I mean, we play pirate like it's real. We play fairy. I mean, we'll go for a day doing some pretend thing, not ever actively saying we're pretending, but it's imaginary. And so I know I feel like we could have a really rich experience with that. Basically equal to actually saying that he's real. But the problem is that when it came time, I just said something to Chris, because it was getting close to Christmas time, and I said, "So what are we doing officially?" And he's like, "I don't know, Santa Claus is your thing, I'm following your lead." And so I was like, I don't know what I should do. And so she just started, there's a couple of shows, she watches Handy Manny and Jake and the Neverland Pirates, and they talk about Santa Claus. So this is where her whole Santa Claus concept has come from, basically, is that. And then now that she's talked about it, we've read a couple of books too. But I really haven't brought up anything still. And I can't remember what it was, but the other day we were sitting somewhere, we were having lunch somewhere, and she said, she asked if mermaids or something were real. She said, "Are mermaids real?" And I said, "No, sailors used to think that they were real. People have stories about seeing them, but pretty much everybody thinks that they aren't real, and nobody's ever seen one in real life. So no, they're just made up." And so then I kind of I got my phone out and started recording her, and I was like, "What do you think about fairies? And are those real?" And she's like, no. And went through, and I wasn't going to say Santa Claus because I was just interested to see what she said and a bunch of other things, and we hadn't decided for sure what we were doing. And so Chris said, "Is Santa Claus real?" And at the end of this really long line of fairies and princesses, and yes, princesses are real, but only in a couple countries, and I can't think of all the things we talked about, but at the end of all of it, Chris said, "Is Santa Claus real?" And she says, "Yeah." "Oh yeah, obviously he's real." Everything else was, "No, that's just something we play. No, that would be silly if it was real, but it's fun. No, magic isn't real. No, whatever." And that's what it was. Chris said, "So if magic isn't real, what about Santa Claus? Is Santa Claus real?" "Oh yeah, Santa Claus is real." Oh man. So then I'm like, okay. And so I don't even remember how it went after that, but interestingly, last night I was doing some work on my computer, and Cassidy was watching another Handy Manny episode that talks about I think it's the tooth mouse. She calls it the tooth mouth, but I think it's the tooth mouse, but it's the equivalent to the tooth fairy. And she knows the tooth fairy from some show that we don't watch anymore because I don't like it. Oh, Super Y. So she just came right over and says, "Mom, is the tooth mouth real?" And I was like, "Oh man, I haven't thought about it enough yet. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do." And so I was
Yeah.
like, what I said? So I said, "What do you think?" And she goes, "No, no, no. Is the tooth mouth real? Like, the tooth fairy?" And I said, "Well, what do you think about it?" And she goes, "No, Mom. Let me tell you about the tooth fairy." And so she told me all about the tooth fairy because she thought I just wasn't understanding her correctly. Like
Right.
by me saying, "What do you think?" And I just said, "Well, I'll tell you what. When I was little, I used to put my tooth in an envelope under my pillow at nighttime, and when I woke up, the tooth was gone and there was a quarters." And she's like, "Oh, we need to go ask Daddy." And so we went down and talked to Chris, and Chris said what happened, and so it was still never answered. So that's kind of where we're at right now with everything. And I guess now her being 4.5 is apparently the age where you start just flat out asking, "Is it real?" So when she gets to Santa Claus, I mean, I never had that big of a connection to the Tooth Fairy. The Easter Bunny, me and my brother set up very elaborate booby traps to try to capture evidence of the Tooth Fairy. And so I had a little bit more connection, but again, didn't care that much. But it's specifically Santa Claus that it's just, I don't know what it is. What do you think it is? Why is Santa Claus so different?
I don't know. Maybe because I don't know. There's such a good story behind him and a good message that goes along with it, that well, I guess a good message for us. I don't know. Everybody does Santa a little bit differently, but spreading kindness and joy and giving presents to little girls and boys. I mean, it's something that people want to believe. And um, the Easter Bunny, um, I don't know. It's just a little bit more of a stretch because it's a bunny,
Yeah.
and same with the Tooth Fairy. And um, I don't know. Santa just maybe seems more real because he's more person-like. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I feel more of a connection to Santa too. The Easter Bunny was always fun, and the Tooth Fairy was fun, but absolutely nothing like Santa Claus at all.
Yeah.
Um, and I was thinking about how I was really disappointed when I found out, and how we're still doing it with Stella anyway.
Uh-huh.
And I think I just have so many good memories of the Santa Claus experience that I just want her to experience that too. And um, just well, the other night we went to drive through Winter Wonderland in Topeka, which is like a big light display, and they had a Santa Claus there, and that would come up to your window, the kids' windows, right after you paid or as you were paying, and say hello to them. And a lady came to my window first and asked me what my daughter's name was, so that Santa could greet her by name. And so then, so I rolled Stella's window down, not quite knowing how she would respond to it because she's pretty timid a lot of the time and kind of shy. And um, Santa Claus came up to her window and she immediately looked away, like she wasn't, like she seemed kind of scared. And
Hang on. I don't
then
know if
Santa
it
Claus,
blanked out for
oh,
everybody else. It blanked out for me for just a second. You thought she'd be kind of timid.
oh, yeah, I said I thought she would be kind of timid because she's kind of slow to warm up to people, and probably especially a bearded man in a red suit. Um, but so he came up to the window and she kind of looked away, and I thought she was gonna be upset, but then he spoke, and this particular Santa had a really soft, gentle voice, and he said, "Hi, Stella," and he handed her a thing of candy, and her eyes, like I'm gonna get teary-eyed talking about it. Her eyes just like lit up with joy and magic, and I can't even describe it. I mean, I'm sure everyone has seen that look in their own kids, so everybody probably knows what I'm talking about. But she would look at me and look back at her candy, and she was speechless. She was so excited and happy, and she was just looking at me like, did that really just happen? And so, I mean, that's why we went ahead and chose to do it with Stella, or I went ahead and chose to do it, I guess, because Jacob was more like Chris. He said kind of whatever you want to do. It's not important to me, but if you want to do it, that's fine. So, yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
I was also thinking about, I just mentioned how everybody does Santa Claus a little bit differently, and I wanted to I wanted to be sure and say that we don't use Santa as any kind of like behavior control. Um, we we believe that you give gifts out of the goodness of your heart, and you don't get a gift because you've been good, or you don't not get a gift because you've been bad. And we think it's a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit creepy to think of somebody watching you, and um, so yeah, we don't use it. We don't do that part of it at all. We haven't even talked about it. I can't even bring myself to sing the "You better watch out, you better not cry" song. So you're clear of that, and we just kind of do the. Um, but we also don't do any kind of punishment or reward systems either. So yeah, there's that. But how do you guys do it? Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess you kind of have
that's
capacity.
that actually. I mean, we were talking about it, and when she had brought it up, and Chris was kind of just doing it as a joke. But he said she. I don't remember what it was, but we were about to go do something or something, and Chris says, "But you know how the Santa Claus thing works because it wasn't a big deal to him." He goes, "You know how that Santa Claus thing works. Santa brings presents when you're nice." And I just was like, oh, like, just like wanted to hit, stop him. Like, what are you doing? If we're doing Santa Claus, we're not doing it that way. Oh no! And so I didn't want to interrupt or anything. I just waited and just waited until she was done and said something later. I was like, no, if we're doing Santa Claus, that's not ever a part of, that's not what we ever have done for Santa Claus. We don't care about that part at all. And he's like, I don't know, that's why you were supposed to take the lead with this. I'm like, of all the things that you would bring up directly. But anyway, it kind of actually brought up because later on she said something, because she's been talking about bad guys a lot recently. It was before any of this, she started asking if bad guys were real, because we pretend so much and we pretend bad guys, and so she was thinking that bad guys is something that we pretend, so probably it's not real. And so she goes, so one night she was saying something about bad guys not being real, and I said, well, there are bad guys, there's just a lot more good guys in the world, and so that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so we're talking about them being real, and so she said, sometime around then, about so if bad guys are bad, then they don't get presents. And then she, just kind of thinking out loud, she says something like, but maybe if the but no, I no, she said if bad guys are bad, then they don't get any presents. And Chris said, well, what if they do something that's good? And she's like, no, bad guys are bad, so they don't get any presents. And Chris is like, well, do you think bad guys have moms and dads? And she said, yeah. And she said, do you think that they love their moms and dads? Do you think they give them hugs? And she's just like, I don't know. And he's like, well, maybe if they do some good things, maybe they get some presents. And so it was just, we haven't talked about it since. It's just not where I would have gone at all with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I was planning on doing all of the traditions that we've done the whole time, like writing a letter and stuff like that. But I was planning, how much you always plan when you're gonna have your first kid, and then how much actually comes
Right.
true. It's always interesting, but I was planning on doing it all and just saying we're gonna write Santa Claus a letter, because we're gonna pretend like he comes tonight or whatever, just throw the word pretend or play or something like that in every once in a while and not make a
Yeah.
big deal out of it. But then when she asks, you can just easily say, no, it's just a game that we play. And then I was very proud of this idea because then it would be very easy to tell her, just so you know, some people really pretend like it's really real. So, if other kids are talking about it, don't mess up their game. They are pretending like it's actually real. We just, we pretend it, but we don't pretend like it's real, and other people do. So I was all happy about that. And so now I haven't thought through what we're going to do because we are going to leave cookies for Santa because that's what I do in my family, and I really want to do it with her. And it's a very fun game, and it's very fun to see what Santa Claus says in the morning and what the handwriting looks like, and how somehow Santa Claus has wrapping paper that we don't have in our house at all. You know, it's
Yeah.
magic, and I love all that. And I really thought that I could do it with, I don't know, just without that level of, no, this is absolutely real, but this is kind of cool, like a magic show where it's not real, but it's still so amazing that, you know it's just so amazing that it's almost real even when it's not. I was just
Yeah.
hoping that I could do that, but I just don't feel. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure I'm way more worried about it than I need to be, and there's all those articles, that say it's great to pretend, and yeah, I mean, so much good thought is going into it, and like that article that we posted about all the cognitive benefits and problem solving and deduction and reasoning and thinking outside of yourself and trying to figure out how one person can get around the world in one night. And I mean, we're talking about space-time relations here. Can Santa Claus
Yeah.
slow down the space-time continuum?
Yeah, I loved that article and all of those scientific things it pointed out about what their, brains are doing or um, to think about Santa and all of those concepts. That was really interesting.
Yeah. That's what I want. I mean, I like to think of it anyway. I mean, it's like, it's really similar to me and Chris having conversations about the zombie apocalypse. We talk about it, we talk about it when it's going to happen. Do we really think it's going to happen? No. We could have
Right.
some, natural disaster that it's all useful for, but, we don't think there's going to be zombies that are coming. But we talk about it as if it's real. We talk about it in real life. We put it in the real future. I just don't know why I don't know if it's because I know that she can't quite hold the two things in her mind right now. Like I feel like, she's at a very black and white stage in life where it's either real or it's not. She but she's, I don't know, with other things she can pretend like it's real. I mean, she'll even in pretend play, she'll even say like let's pretend, and then she'll say, okay, so we're pretending, but for real you're my sister, but we're just pretending. Like she'll clarify. She's really specific about it, so I feel like she could, but it's just, I don't know, it all feels so weird. It's all in the real world, it's so much harder to execute than in the
Yeah.
theoretical world. But I would
Yeah.
love to just have conversations like that, like, but I don't want to. I don't know. But I've always had a big thing about lying too. I don't want to lie to her.
That's exactly, yeah, that's my big hang up too, and that's why I still kind of not really go back and forth about whether or not we're going to do Santa, but I just put a lot of thought into how we're going to, continue to do it. Stella's pretty young now. She's almost 2.5, and so um, I don't know. I might still have some time to revise, but she's
Yeah.
already asking pretty, I don't know, deeper questions than I anticipated at this
Hmm.
age. Like today, she asked me, "Where is heaven?" So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting well practiced at answering big questions, um, but I really love your idea of um, just doing it all like you would normally do it, but throwing the word pretend in there. Like now we're gonna leave cookies for Santa because we're gonna pretend he's gonna come tonight. And I mean, I had never really thought of doing it that way before, but I really, really like that. But then there's also the little part of me that's like, no, I want to
Yeah.
pretend. real.
Right?
I
I
want her
know.
to think it's real, and because it just feels like there's so much magic to that, and
Hmm.
but then that's us pushing our adult, wants
Right.
onto our kids. But
Yeah.
and so then that brings the question of if we do it more for our own enjoyment or for theirs, which
Hmm.
I think I think that we do it for theirs. I mean,
I think it's a
like I
game.
said,
It's a game that we play, you know?
yeah.
It's for
And
us and for them.
yeah, and the reason we're so adamant about wanting to do it for them is because we had such good experiences with it when we were kids. Um, and so we just want them to have those good experiences too.
Yep. So here's another issue, and I hesitate to bring it up because I don't want you to think too much about it because it doesn't need to be this dramatic. But I have had the thought cross my mind, both of us being Christian here, um, that we're talking about Christmas, which is the birth of Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God, at the same time that we're talking about Santa Claus. And one of them we're pretending is real, and then later on they're going to find out he isn't real. And one of them is very supernatural in the story that we tell, Jesus, but we don't ever say he's not real. So I was kind of thinking about that and about the association of Santa Claus, especially because people think of God as a big bearded guy in the sky, and how it's going to come across saying, yeah, that one's fake, but the other one that's sort of a little bit unbelievable is real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about that too. And actually, um, I am close to several people who don't do Santa Claus, and that's the big reason for most of them, or for one family in particular that I'm thinking of. The reason that they don't do it is because, yeah, when you find out Santa Claus isn't real, then okay, well, I guess God's not real either. I mean, or that they're afraid that that's what their kids would think.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I I can totally see where people are coming from on that. Like absolutely. But I personally don't ever remember doubting God or doubting the existence of Jesus or anything when I found out that Santa wasn't real. That
Yeah.
the two didn't even go together in my mind,
Right.
and I don't.
That's what, yeah, for me there was two very separate things happening at
Yeah,
Christmas time that had nothing to do with each other.
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, I mean, we talked about both of them around Christmas time, but never like never really in the same context, or one wasn't
Hmm.
related to the other.
Hmm.
And um, I have heard of families doing Santa in a way where they like have Santa and they say that like Santa and Jesus collaborate kind of, and so the kids are asking Jesus for presents or for what they want. They're telling Jesus what they want, but then like Jesus works with Santa to make it happen. And that I can see not I can see that maybe leading to the
Yeah.
um doubtfulness in God a little bit more, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't use them together like that.
Yeah. She asked me, we have just a little really short board book story about the nativity scene, and said something about Jesus, and I said, "Do you remember who Jesus is? Do you remember that Jesus is God?" And she asked me that one. She said, "Is that for real? Is that in real life?" And I said, "Yeah, we believe that that's real. That's what really actually happened." And she's like, "Oh," and went on like she didn't matter. And then we got out the Christmas decorations, and I got out my little nativity scene, and so she was playing with that. And I have this Santa Claus that's a hockey player, Santa Claus ornament, And she brought it
Yeah.
over to the manger scene, and she was telling me all about the secret doors that led up to Santa Claus. Like, this is where Jesus was born, and then the shepherd goes through this, this hidden door, and then that's where Santa Claus is playing hockey. And I'm like, what is my religious duty here? I know she's just pretending. I know it's not making an impression. Do I need to separate this out? And yeah, I just let her be a kid. It's fine. She'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing is you said that, you were looking at a book with her or whatever, um, and talking about Jesus being real. And so yeah, like God is kind of woven into our our daily life, I guess. I mean,
Hmm.
we talk about it and not just at Christmas time. And so I I mean, of course we talk about Jesus's birth at Christmas time, um but the whole idea of God and heaven and Jesus and praying, um that's woven in more consistently. And
Hmm.
so, and it was the same way when I was growing up. And so I think that that's why I didn't really question it.
Hmm.
I don't know. But um, I also just really, really trusted anything my parents told me. So that's part of why I would think I was so devastated when I found out Santa wasn't real because I just trusted my parents so much. And like honestly, if my mom would have told me then no, Santa really is real, that story's wrong, I would have believed her.
Uh-huh.
So, um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I never questioned God either, but
Yeah. Well, that's,
could
I
just
mean, my mom still, I mean, she's not that, well, that's not true. I mean, I just never really had thought of her as that imaginative kind of a person, but she still, to this day, says, I don't know about Santa, where this gift came from. Like she'll give my stepdad uh, presents from Santa Claus, and
yeah.
we know that it's from him, but it still has different wrapping paper on it, and it's to him, it's to my stepdad, who's
Aw.
70 now, and she gives it to him and says it's from Santa Claus, and he'll laugh and smile really big and say, "Well, how did you know that, or where did you go to get this, or whatever?" And she'll just say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not from me. I didn't get that." And she still plays like she never flat out says that there's no Santa Claus, that Santa Claus isn't
Yeah.
real. I mean, she plays it completely through, and it doesn't ever seem devious, and it doesn't ever seem tricky, and it doesn't ever seem you know uh, coercive or anything like that. She's just always played it, and just that's just been part of how it is. And I've
Yeah.
known forever that it's been pretend, but that's just how we play it. And I don't know. I just really like the way it turned out. I just don't know the mechanics behind how what went into it when
How
I
they
was
made it
little.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want it to turn out the same way, but I don't know the inputs to make it turn out so fun. Like
Yeah.
where we come
That's
out of
funny
it
you say
appreciating
that.
our parents. Yeah.
Because I remember before Stella was born, I would just ask my mom all the time, like, but how did you make sure this? Or,
Mhm.
just because I was the same way. Like I want everything, for her to be the same as my parents made it for me. But it's like you said, I don't really know how they did that. And
Uh huh.
um, they probably don't either because they
Yeah.
didn't put that much thought into it.
Yeah.
But
Because you're just, I mean, both of us who have been thinking about this for years before we were married, even, and now
yeah.
here we are, and we're still talking about exactly how we want to do it. Like, you just make it
Yeah.
up. We're just making it up,
Yep.
and that's fine. All right. Well, I hope we have given everybody some good things to think about. And was there anything else you wanted to add, Nancy?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
I think it's pretty clear from at least most experts that it's not harmful to do Santa Claus, however people do it. And I'm glad you brought up about the naughty and nice thing. Um, kids do a lot better with unconditional love and support without being coerced into giving. But we can talk about that in another episode,
Yes.
or
Let's
discipline,
do.
or in a series of
Maybe
podcasts.
that would be better. Yeah.
Maybe so. All right. Well, Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you next time.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.